Hello and welcome back to Wine Blast, where all you need is an open mind and a healthy thirst. And this episode is all about how to be a better wine lover.
And the key term in that mix is wine. because, of course, we did ask people about this by way of research for this episode, and one bright spark got straight back and answered the question of how to be a better wine lover with write some sort of vinous Kama Sutra. Get it? Yeah? Yeah, get it? Okay. The lover, the better lover. Anyway,
I love it.
Thank you, Daniel, for that. And then someone else on the same theme wrote in, don't get caught drinking around.
So I'm not sure this was necessarily the direction we'd anticipated this subject going in, but maybe that's our naivety. As for a vinous Kama Sutra, the mind boggles. But
don't want to think too long about it.
But let's try and keep on the straight and narrow, because this episode follows on from our previous one, which was all about what we wine lovers want to see happen in the year ahead. A wine lover's wish list, if you like.
Yeah, and we covered a lot of ground in that one, didn't we? We touched on the rise of English wine, ending the war in Ukraine, improving no alcohol wine was in there, wasn't it? Better wine in cans,
absolutely,
combating climate change, growth in organics, the joys of travelling again came up, didn't it? The importance of inclusivity too. So lots of stuff, even the opening of undies. Got to mention. Do you remember that? That was a high point.
They did indeed. I'm not sure how, but they did. It is important to add, though, that however intrigued you may or may not be, you don't need to listen to that episode to make sense of this one. Because in this programme, we really wanted to hone in on how we can all become better wine lovers, thinking about what we might change or tweak or aspire to in the year ahead on a personal level. And that could be serious or fun or anything in between. It's self-improvement via a wine glass, which is probably the only form of self-improvement I'm interested in, frankly.
Amen to that, yeah. Should we share a clip by way of example?
Why not?
And perhaps maybe to raise the tone a bit.
I think you've got to experiment. You've got to embrace trying new things. I also think that we, all of us, everyone needs to have less judgment on what people actually do enjoy, because the whole point of wine is that it's an absolutely delicious drink.
Wine writer Libby Brodie there on how to be a better wine lover. We'll be hearing more from her, as well as Master of Wine Peter McCombie and Master Sommelier Garad Devani. And we've had lots of views from all around the world, which we'll also be exploring, won't we? Yeah. Please do feel free to share your views on this topic with us. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. And we will, of course, be sharing our own views as well.
I do love a bit of oversharing. Lots of oversharing. And we'll also be tasting and sharing some special wine in this episode. More details on that later on. But to carry on this subject of sharing, I feel like I'm saying sharing a lot.
There's a lot of sharing going on.
Before we started in earnest, we did just want to share the most lovely email we received. This kind of message is just the best. I cannot tell you how this kind of thing fills us with joy. And it was from Francesca and Jacob. I hope I've pronounced your names right. Do you want to read this email out?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So it goes like this. Dear Susie and Peter, we are two young wine lovers. It's very appropriate. At the first stages of our learning journey, and we just love your podcast. Thank you. After some time listening to the new episodes, we felt the urge to go right back to episode 1 of Wine Blast, and we just had to replicate the wine food pairings you guys propose. So, here is a couple of pictures of our Bill Granger Mazerman meatballs on a Saturday night at our cabin in the Norwegian forest. We did not find the exact Riesling or Shiraz you guys chose, so we had to go for get this, Naked on Roller Skates 2020 and a Mount Trio 2021. We love both of them, but there was wide consensus about the Riesling being the perfect match for our dish. It had all the lime and elderflower aromas that your Jim Barry the Lodge Riesling did. But being off dry, it was maybe an even easier pairing with the spices. It just made our curry stand out. Keep up the good work. Cheers from Norway, Francesca and Jakob.
Naked on roller skates. There we go. The risque theme continues. Just like the mentioning the Kama Sutra. I just thought Kava Sutra. Maybe Kava Sutra. See what I've done there?
Yeah, Move on.
On that note, before I do move on, which is fair enough, it's a fair cop. I have actually got something up my sleeve in this sense, along the theme of the Kama Sutra.
Bunch of flowers.
But I will save it for later. Don't ask now, but you definitely don't want to miss this. Anyway, yes, moving on. To clarify, this message did come with a couple of photos, which were fantastic, and we'll put those up in the show notes on our site. Loving that Norwegian forest cabin ambiance. Oh, wow. And yes, I can confirm that Naked on Roller Skates is a wine rather than a metaphor. I believe it's a McLaren Vale Shiraz Mataro blend from Some Young Punks. Looks like a really interesting wine. I haven't tried it. And the Mount Trio Riesling is also Australian from Great Southern.
Which I suppose follows the lead we set with the Australian wines for this dish.
Yeah.
You know, we had, didn't we, the Clonakilla Shiraz as well as the Jim Barry Riesling. That was our first ever episode.
I can't believe that's amazing, isn't it?
Way back in April 2020.
I know, there's a thought. Wow.
Whew. Anyway, and we've worked our way through some pretty delicious recipes since then, actually, haven't we?
Yes.
Which are all well worth checking out. But thank you, Francesca and Jacob, for doing that and sending us the pictures. We hope you have fun eating and drinking your way through the rest of the podcast archive. Just don't miss the umami bomb burger. It will blow your mind.
I haven't been the same since that burger.
No.
I think I've been sort of half man, half burger.
Wasn't that big?
Well worth trying. No, it's not the bigness. It's the impact. Maximum impact. Anyway. So Francesca and Jacob have already shown us one way to be a better wine lover this year, just to tuck in, and not just to our podcast. That would be impossibly self-important to suggest that. But to other wine podcasts as well, magazines, TV, books, wine book clubs, whatever. Spread the net widely. Get involved. Join the conversation.
Yeah, and tuck into your wine and food too. Don't be afraid. Get going. Treat your taste buds and try new things. Be bold, be thirsty. And this does lead us quite neatly on to some of the many views on this subject we received after we put the question out on social media. And the question was, how can we be better wine lovers this year? Now, Duncan Nifton said, buy more.
Simple.
End
Effective.
of.
Yeah.
Another suggestion was, deeper glasses. Love that one.
I like the thought of that. It's a bit meta, isn't it? How deep can the glass go?
Not bigger,
anyway,
just deeper.
Just deeper. And some suggestions were quite specific, weren't they? So one said, let's all drink more Lambrusco. Which I can't help but find really quite compelling. It's slightly random but quite compelling. I love that. I want to go
slightly
drink more
time with something
Lambrusco.
at the end of our pod today, doesn't it? So
it does.
Yeah.
So
so
going in another direction.
Thought in mind.
Going in another direction. Simon Colwell said, "Pour all the Pinot Gris down the sink."
Oh.
I'm not sure I'll be doing that, Simon. Actually, Pinot Grigio maybe, but not the Pinot Gris.
Little bit pedantic, Mr. Richards.
Fair enough. But the sentiment is still strong and honest and genuine. Danny Broughton said, "Drink better, drink different." That could be a slogan for a political party, couldn't it? Should we start a political party? No. Anyway, Rain Denneman wrote, "Drink less wine, keep it special. The only reference is quality."
I'm afraid I tuned out at less wine there, but I love keep it special. Yeah, there's something in that.
Keep it special.
Now, our colleague wine writer Rupert Miller said, "Drink more sherry." No, Riesling. Sauterne. Wait. Love that. Love that. So just the way he kind of brilliantly sticks the knife into all of us winos who constantly go on about the likes of Riesling and sherry, and no one ever takes the blind bit of notice, do they? I mean, really. And Tom Graves brilliantly rounded this off by replying to Rupert saying, "You had me at drink more."
Dino wrote, "Pair food with wine, not the reverse." You heard it here first. So rather than saying, I guess, this is what I fancy to eat tonight, what wine's going to go with that, saying, this is the wine I want tonight, what can I eat with it? And that's definitely one way to be a better wine lover, Dino. Let us know how you get on.
And actually, this is something we probably do all the time. And we had a very good example recently in our household, didn't we?
Did we?
Yep, we did. We did the other weekend. So after I'll remind you, after what felt like a very long week, I can't really remember why, but it did. We
You're
knew
not narrowing it down.
That's every week, isn't it? We knew we wanted to taste some Burgundy ahead of the Burgundy en Primeur tasting week in London, and I cooked not only porcini and truffle arancini. Remember that?
Oh yes.
Oh my goodness, I've never made those, but they were amazing. They're not that difficult to make. I thought they would be really difficult. They're not. I promise you. But they were fabulous, weren't they? We had them with some lovely truffle mustard mayo. Anyway, but I also cooked a lobster mac and cheese. We were going for it, weren't we?
Oh.
complete with a sort of a crunchy panko and chorizo topping. Again, we've never done that before, but I always wanted to, and I am delighted to say it all went down extremely well with both the white and the red Burgundy we opened, didn't it?
I think I lost the power of speech at that point, didn't I?
To be fair, though, I think that might just have been the quantity of wine we consumed as opposed to the amazing food and wine pairing.
A bit of both, but honestly, the food was just. I mean, sometimes food can do that. I mean, some wine can do it, and food can do it too. Actually, anyway. So, no, very well said. Thank you for reminding me of that. So, anyway, yes, Dino, thank you for that suggestion. Go for it, lad. And if anyone's interested in those recipes, I'm sure we can rustle them up if people want them, can't we?
I could
probably share them in due course. Anyway, I'm not sure what wine would be the starting point for my truffle marmite.
Oh gosh,
perhaps the best Christmas present ever. And would that make me a better wine lover or a worse wine lover?
Worse.
Really, in your world,
it would in my world.
I know for a lot of people out there,
I think it probably boils down to personal taste. But
anyway,
I'm
maybe that
not
could be a
Marmite
quest
fan.
for another time.
Maybe. Anyway, moving on. I love this from Nye Timber winemaker Brad Greatrex. Give a bottle of wine that we love to someone who isn't expecting it, just because. Isn't that lovely?
Oh, that's very lovely.
I love that.
I think if we all did that,
Brad.
the world would be a nicer place, wouldn't it? Maybe a slightly
totally
tipsier
place.
But that's not a bad thing. So if you catch me hanging around the gates at Nye Timber, trying to look like I'm not expecting anything in particular, you'll know why. I might get hypothermia,
just
but
look
it'll
out
definitely be worth it.
But anyway, following on from this, on the same theme, Matt Cockbill said, share. Just share. Our colleague Joe Fattorini of the Wine Show TV fame suggested, Paulet, share your best with others doing the same. The mutual enjoyment will be greater than the sum of its parts. And then John Veltier, I don't know that I've pronounced that correctly, I'm sorry if not John, but he wrote along similar lines saying, do more group tastings with those bottles you've been saving for 2 decades.
Yeah, this is all great. I mean, Paulet, by the way, is,
share.
if you haven't experienced one, it's a sort of bring your own posh bottle party, and it can be massive, and you share. And
I'm going to admit here, I had to ask you this, didn't I? What it was, I didn't know.
Sounds better
Sorry.
in French. But I think sharing and caring through the medium of wine should be our mottos this year, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Good one. So here's another suggestion of how to be a better wine lover that I particularly liked. It was from Lee Isaacs, another top human being who we know well. He's also starred on the pod before. He said 3 words: listen, encourage, celebrate. And I think he's nailed it, hasn't he? He's nailed it in 3 words. It's hard to follow that, really.
Indeed. So how about we shift direction a bit slightly, because a lot of responses touched on the subject of sustainability.
Yeah.
It's an issue that's clearly top of many people's agenda, and how we as wine lovers can do our bit to militate against climate change. So Odile advised, drink only wines from sustainable farming, winemaking and packaging. Supporting winemakers who make the effort to move into regenerative farming is a good pledge, and producers in Champagne and others need a kick to be on that path.
A good old kicking. Why not?
So that was Odile.
I think we, as consumers, probably sometimes underestimate our people power, don't we? The way we can sort of vote with our feet and our wallets. And now, Champagne recently came in for a bit of a kicking in the press, didn't it, after it was reported that the authorities there were doing a U-turn on a commitment to eliminate chemical herbicides use in the region's vineyards by 2025. We won't go into that here, I don't think. And I don't know if that's necessarily what Odile was referring to, actually. But the point is, we can all make informed choices about what we drink. And the more producers that are farming responsibly and doing their bit to minimise their impact on the planet, the more people will want to buy and support them.
Absolutely.
I suppose it's up to us as well as communicators to work out who's doing what and
who's doing what and who's doing the right thing.
Inform everyone.
Absolutely. And Kyle at Piccinino wrote, take a stand against wine in overly heavy bottles. Shocking, they're still a thing.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Kyle. And that was a sentiment we heard quite a bit. Also the desire to seek out wines in alternative formats like cans or bag-in-box, and give them a try, partly with sustainability in mind. Then Ian Lindsay moved this on further, saying, if we want to continue to enjoy wines from historic terroir, we must support sustainable wine in the vineyard, winery, and especially in transport and packaging. Some producers do their bit, educators and consumers must too.
Yeah, so we just mentioned that, haven't we? So collective responsibility, I think that's quite right. You know, you might add that government may have a role to play in there too. maybe with tax incentives for people doing the right thing, for example, with alternative packaging. Anyway, another way to be better, more sustainable wine lover is to shop local. Shannon Skinner said support local winemakers. Anna B voted to try something local or at least UK produced. Michael Collins wrote from Ireland to suggest drink mostly wines from our own continents, lower carbon footprint. I would have suggested our own countries, but we can't really make wine in mine.
Oh, I don't know, Michael. We may yet see a great Irish wine.
There is Irish wine.
Be fun, wouldn't it? But the general idea is a nice one. That said, unfortunately, it's not always as simple as local equals lower carbon footprint, if only it was. It really depends on how the wine was shipped and packaged. It can apparently be better for the environment in some cases to ship from New Zealand or Australia than truck wine up from the south of France by road, which is extraordinary, really. So maybe that's just one to investigate a bit further. It's not clear cut. It would be good to have some sort of clarity on this. In fact, wouldn't
totally.
it?
Which is still a bit lacking, isn't it? But it's hard to find out what wine comes with what impact. But generally speaking, I think buying as local as possible is a good way to go. To avoid the uncertainty, and it certainly works for us with English wines, doesn't it?
It does,
Moving on,
definitely.
the Bib
More and more.
Wine Company suggested, how about being open-minded to all people and types of wine? It's all too easy to dismiss a person before talking to them, or to dismiss a wine before drinking it.
I like that way of thinking. Yeah. Someone else wrote less prejudice. And on this very same theme, here's what wine writer Libby Brodie said in terms of how to be a better wine lover.
I think you've got to experiment. You've got to embrace trying new things. I also think that we, all of us, everyone needs to have less judgment what people actually do enjoy, because the whole point of wine is that it's an absolutely delicious drink. And it obviously has all these offshoots of culture and poetry and geography and science, and that's amazing. But ultimately, it's about what the individual is enjoying. And I think we all have to accept everyone else's personal preferences and embrace this, and that makes you a true wine lover.
Libby, thanks so much.
Well said, Libby. Wine doesn't have to be complicated. It can be pretty simple and delicious just the same, can't it? There is, of course, this whole fascinating world behind it, if you care to take an interest, but you don't have to. And nor should any wine lover put people off by making the subject any more intimidating than it needs to be. That's really important.
So Daryl Balfour said this, encourage people to drink wine however they like drinking wine. If that means adding ice or soda to their Sauvignon or whatever, so be it. And this was a sentiment echoed by Master of Wine Peter McCombie.
I want people to learn to trust their own palate. My wife is Dutch, and the Dutch are not short of opinions. She's has strong opinions about wine, and I don't always agree with her, but she's also right. And I think it's really important as wine lovers that we accept that there are different things that appeal to different people, and even when we try to be objective, which you and I do on a daily basis, the truth is we all have subjective opinions, and we all have our biases, and we'll have our weaknesses even. And I think recognising those biases and weaknesses makes us better.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you very much, Peter.
Excellent.
Be humble was what Mario wrote, and it's kind of the same thing. Thompson and Scott said be less cliquey, be open-minded, have more fun. And I think this open-minded, more sort of inclusive mindset can also be applied to wine styles as well, can't it? And this was a very common theme in these suggestions of how to be a better wine lover. So Pascal Jabour writes, get out of your comfort zone, explore new grapes, blends, regions, and encourage young, innovative winemakers.
That's nice. I like that. I mean, we do need to foster innovation and creativity in wine. Give things a chance. We all tend to stick to what we know, so it can be hard and there will be disappointments, but surely it's worth a go. Charlie Langridge suggested break away from the big grapes and regions and find banging wines from crazy places, weird grapes and rebel producers. I love the big names. Bourgogne is my vice, but everyone loves an underdog / hidden gem / amazing surprise. And Philip C. Grandbois wrote, spend less time beating the drum of first growth. Premier Cru, Grand Cru, Grand Reserva, etc., and open the world to the other 90% of winemakers.
Yeah, I like the way this is being related back to people, the winemakers. It makes it very personal. On which note, I'd like to bring in Master Sommelier Gareth Devaney.
There's still sort of a bit of pretentiousness about it. It's slowly but surely eking it out, but I think it is still something to be enjoyed and not to be sort of put too much on a pedestal. I mean, for sure, some people are doing amazing things and they need to be respected. But yeah, I always think of a glass of wine with its place in the meal setting or with friends or in a social setting, and it should just be something that's not taken seriously in the fact that it's somebody's taken time to make something beautiful, but nothing pretentious, nothing sort of elitist. And surely some prices can sort of not help that situation. But I think overall, I think when I first started in the wine trade 25 years ago, it was definitely a different environment. And I think, but keep that effort up, I think.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Putting wine on the table, not on a pedestal. I love that. Discover the world was one suggestion of how to be a better wine lover. And Stu said, try new stuff. I know what I like, but I'm going to push it. Try things I've never had or had a desire to have. Open my mind a bit more.
Yeah. So interestingly, I think a lot of people tended to focus on sort of smaller producers and niche things in this context. For example, Michael Serdikoff wrote, find small production wineries that make amazing wines, which is great. Totally endorse that. But we also had the opposite view expressed from Christian Miller, who said, don't ignore or bash larger producers, especially co-ops. And I thought that was really interesting, actually, because small doesn't necessarily mean good, does it? And big doesn't equal bad. And co-ops are often, really important for local rural communities, and they can make great wine. So I think there's something really interesting in that.
I agree. I mean, it's not just about size or how mainstream the variety or wine style is. Every producer and every wine needs to be taken on its own merits. Funnily enough, changing subjects, but following on from this point, the Folding Hill Wine Company posed the question whether one way to be a better wine lover was don't buy or recommend wines from supermarkets.
Interesting one. Yeah.
Bit controversial.
Yeah, I think that's controversial. I think, given so many people do their shopping in supermarkets. And they can, offer great value and they're very user-friendly places, aren't they?
A good range,
Yeah, and they often have a really good range.
Really good range.
And the whole consolidation of retail is an issue in wine, and we'd all love to support smaller independent wine specialists as much as possible. I guess there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? It's not a question of either or, but definitely try to support the smaller specialist shops or outlets within that. Maybe.
Yeah, and to that point, Tom wrote, work together to make independent retailers closer to the norm than the special treat exception. Big wine retail has its place, of course, but its ratio of category share to impact on margins, knowledge, discovery and quality across the board shows scope for correction. I think that's a nice way of thinking about being a better wine lover, isn't it?
Yeah, what's
nice
it, Tom?
and balanced.
Mike North also wrote in to say, not all supermarkets are created equal, which is
True.
Also true. Let's leave that there. Now, I think it's just time to hear a final couple of views before we come on to our wines. David Bennett said, enjoy the thrill of the taste, like that. And Joe Dodsley wrote, I ask myself this question, i.e. how to be a better wine lover, every day. And every day I come up with the same answer. I love wine for itself. I accept it in all its forms, with all its foibles. I love it wholly.
Well said, Joe. Be a better wine lover by letting your love for wine in all its glorious diversity grow and grow. And the rest will follow. Yeah. On which note, let's have a quick word, shall we, about the wines we're enjoying.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple of bottles here. We've got 3 bottles open, actually, haven't we? They all tie in with the themes in this episode. So the first is a real treat. It's something we've had in our cellar for over a decade. We've been keeping it for...
Which you can't say about many wines.
Not many wines. We keep it for a special occasion, But given that we said in our last episode that every wine lover's wish list this year should include opening, not hoarding these special bottles, do you think this is a way to be a better wine lover? We've gone and done it. We've gone and cracked the screw cap on the Atarangi Lismore Pinot Gris 2009.
And we did it on a Monday night, didn't we? Mad. Now, to be really honest, we had serious reservations about this wine, didn't we? We know how good Atarangi wines are, and we did thoroughly enjoy, we've got to say this, we thoroughly enjoyed an older vintage of this particular wine with home-cured ham when we were in New Zealand, and we were having supper with winemaker Helen Masters many years ago at her house in Martinborough. But she then brought this bottle with a few others with her to the UK when she came to stay with us in Winchester, and that's over a decade ago now. Shall we say the cellaring conditions since have not been perfect. There's been various house renovations and the like, so not perfect, but wow. I mean, just wow.
It's a stunner. It survived everything we've thrown at it. As we know, earlier in this episode, Simon Colwell said he wanted to pour all the Pinot Gris down the sink. Well, Simon, just try this one before you do. Please. Please. It's glorious, isn't it? Absolutely.
It took my breath away, Simon. I honestly did. Beautiful aromatics. You know, you've got dried apricot, ginger, some sort of roasted hazelnut, some spiced cream. And then in your mouth, it's succulent and rich, but still fresh, just the way you want great Pinot Gris to be, you know, to differentiate it from Pinot Grigio. Now, it says on the label that it has 11 grams per litre, but it just comes across as rich rather than sweet. You know, it's a textural thing, isn't it? And that ties in beautifully with juicy acidity and that spice and the rounded texture. I mean, it's delicious. It still feels quite young, amazingly. And it's brilliant with a kind of fusion Asian style of food. I mean, we had miso marinated salmon and mango last night, and that was
beautiful.
Fantastic.
Absolutely beautiful, wasn't it? So there we go. Something a bit different, a bit special. Now that vintage obviously isn't available anymore, but younger vintages are fairly widely available, mainly in New Zealand, Australia, Europe and UK, from what I could find from Wine Searcher. It's about 20 to 25 quid in the UK, so really very reasonable.
That's
not
perfectly,
cheap, but it's
perfectly affordable,
I think it's,
and
very
great value for what it is. Yeah.
But then we've got another wine here, haven't we?
We have.
This one's to tie in both with the theme of trying new things, keeping an open mind, and also drinking local. So it's the Ridgeview Sparkling Red Reserve Pinot Noir, a red sparkling from England. I'm just going to pour some more in my glass while you carry on, so we get the fizz.
Yeah, it certainly it is a bit different, and you get that lovely haunting summer berry and warm earth aromas that you really want from Pinot. If we were being critical, we'd say it's a little bit short. It's a tiny bit bitter on the finish.
And I just love to see a touch more dosage maybe in there to rounding it out a little bit more on the palate, give it a bit more succulence, maybe a bit more age in the bottle too, to sort of bring out those earthy forest floor sides to Pinot, you know, make it even more savoury.
But I think there's a lot going on here.
Yeah,
it's not. At the same time, it's not overdone. It's very Pinot, and it's pretty well judged. Now, this is the kind of wine for me you have on a summer evening, you know, with a plate of charcuterie and cheese, or maybe, you know, if it's in the winter, nice casserole. It's just something a bit different, and it's very much a food fizz.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm never totally convinced by red sparkling wine, I have to say. It's sort of a question of when would you rather have this than a normal fizz?
It's nice for something different.
Or a good rosé sparkling. Or just a straight red wine. You know, yes, it is different, fair enough. You know, but you know, I think the best sparkling red I've ever had was the Rye Mill, the Bee's Knees from Coonawarra. Do you remember that?
We both remember that, don't we?
It just tasted like a great Coonawarra Cabernet with a bit of livening sort of spritz in it, and
it just worked, didn't it?
It was amazing.
Great.
So it can be done, and also I can see your point about cold cuts on a warm evening with this one. I think that would work.
I mean, really, it's something different, and we keep saying, you know, try something different. Anyway, that one's £55, by the way, and only 2,500 bottles were made, so it's a limited edition. It's not cheap, but it's different, and you know, give it a go, you know. And before we finish, I just wanted to quickly mention one last wine. This week is Stephen Spurrier's memorial. He was a truly great wine lover and one of the loveliest men, and he sadly died back in 2021. As we'd say, if you want to be a better wine lover, be more like Stephen. Humble, he was enthusiastic, generous, he was always encouraging. So, to toast him, we have opened a bottle of his own Bride Valley Pinot Noir 2018. And it's gorgeous. It's very light, almost ethereal, you know, an old school style of Pinot. It's elegant, very like the man.
Yeah, old school, elegant, refined. Yeah, so that one's $21.50 from the Vineyard. We've got a personal tribute to Stephen on our website. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, also with a tasting note. So cheers to Stephen, one of the great wine lovers of our time. Now, talking of love, do you remember I said I had something on my sleeve very early on in this episode relating to the vinous Kama Sutra?
Yes.
Yeah, and as far as I remember, you totally signed up to this. So there we go. It's your fault. Well, anyway, Ollie ran this concept through the AI chatbot. ChatGPT.
Did he now? I'm wondering who.
Don't know if you've seen
it.
it. It's been in the press a lot. So the challenge being to get this artificial intelligence to write about wine in the style of the Kama Sutra. Do you want to know what it came up with?
Not really, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me anyway.
Here we go. Okay.
Go on. Go.
So wine is a sensual pleasure that should be savoured and enjoyed. I don't know why I'm doing this voice. It just seems it's an AI. It's a computer, but it just seems like this is sort of bit Terry Thomas needs to be done. Anyway, wine is an art form with subtle nuances, complex flavours. To fully appreciate wine, one should approach it with an open mind and palate. The aroma should be inhaled deeply to fully take in the bouquet. And as the wine is sipped, the taste should be savoured, rolling the liquid over the tongue to discover the rich and varied flavours. The wine should be allowed to breathe as new flavours and aromas are revealed. In the end, wine should be fully experienced with all senses engaged and every moment savoured. How do you think it's doing?
There's quite a lot of savouring going on, isn't there?
There is actually.
Oh, yeah. I'm Well, if that's the vinous Kama Sutra, that's fine by me. It feels a little bit naughty, which is good, I think.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, that's not it. So it went on.
Go on.
In addition to savouring the flavours, more savouring, and aromas of wine, proper positioning
no.
is also important when participating in a wine tasting. When tasting wine, it is recommended to stand up straight with a slight forward lean, as this allows for the wine to flow easily to the back of the tongue for optimal taste detection.
I knew this AI thing wasn't going to end well.
I don't
think I've ever been told how to stand up to taste my wine.
It's
there we
an
go.
interesting one. Proper
there
positioning.
We go. Go on.
Wait for the finale. Here we go. When spitting wine, it is best to do so discreetly, typically into a spittoon or bucket provided at the tasting. This allows one to taste the wine without consuming excessive amounts and to fully focus on evaluating the wine. It is also important to note that spitting wine is not mandatory. It is a matter of personal preference and the context. Some people prefer to swallow the wine and others prefer to spit it out. It is worth...
No, can we just stop?
It is worth noting, here's the last sentence, it is worth noting that spitting wine is not disrespectful. It is a common practice in a professional wine tasting. It allows the taster to evaluate many wines in a short amount of time without getting drunk.
Oh.
And there we are.
Are we really? Is that it? Please.
I think we're just going to leave it there.
I think
there's the mic's been dropped. We just need to move on. The only thing I'd say is here's the future of AI.
Yes,
it's got a long and bright
I think we
future
definitely need to wrap things up now, don't we? Please. Anyway, thank you for joining us. You may never join us again, but we will be back very soon with a brilliant episode. I promise you, all about Burgundy, only Burgundy. And it's a subject every wine lover is keen to dive into, quite literally in most cases. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with your views, I'm not sure we really want to ask for those about this or any other wine-related subject, we'd love to hear from you. And details of how to do just that are in the show notes.
Yeah, our thanks to Libby Brodie, Gareth Devaney and Peter McCombie and everyone else who kindly shared their views with us, including even ChatGPT. Here's to being ever better wine lovers. Cheers.